My name is Matt Parsons and I was born with Erbs palsy, which is also known as brachial plexus injury. I struggle with upper body strength due to the severe nerve damage, and it leaves me only being able to use the right side of my upper body. Even getting onto the school bus was an issue growing up, as it was difficult to lift my school bags, which are always crammed full of books. So my mum did physiotherapy with me every day to try and get some of the nerves fired up and to build up some muscle. It was a difficult time back in the 80s as there was no internet. My parents couldn't do the research that you can do nowadays. They felt alone and had to do the best that they could in the situation. So what about now? Well, here I am, almost 30 years later. My range of movement isn't great, but I still get by. My original plan was to make a feature-length documentary, but as I started interviewing people, I realised that there was far too much to say in just a couple of hours. In this episode, I'm talking to Joe Hughes, a professional boxer who lives in Bristol, living with Erbs palsy. Thank you so much for doing this again. I really appreciate you sort of taking your time out of your day to have a chat with me about Erbs palsy.
Oh, no problem at all, mate. You know what it's like. Anything you can do, sort of try and do, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we met a couple of years ago, and I came down to see you in Bristol. And you know, we had a really good chat and stuff, but I thought it'd be good to catch up again and sort of have another interview, really, just see how things have gone since then, and to sort of maybe touch on things that maybe we didn't in the first time that we chatted.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
So for sort of people that sort of don't know much about boxing and sort of not into the boxing world, so can you sort of tell us sort of what you've done, what you've accomplished, and I know you've done some pretty amazing things. So it'd be really cool if you could sort of tell us what you've done.
Yeah, so basically I started boxing when I was a little kid, more as like a physiotherapy thing that my dad sort of tripped me into. But I just really enjoyed it and just loved it, really. So I just cracked on from there. I had quite a lot of amateur fights and I ended up winning. What did I win? I won 5 national titles and 2 international gold medals.
Wow.
And the biggest thing I wanted as an amateur was the senior ABA championship. So I was the #1 amateur boxer in the country at my weight category when I was 19, and that was for adults.
Wow.
And then I went professional. As a professional, I won the International Silvers Masters title. I won the Southern Area title, so the South of England title. I've won the English title twice, so I've been champion of England twice. And the biggest title I won the European title, so I was the champion of Europe. And when I win that 2018, I should have been British champion a couple of times as well. I sort of won the fights, but didn't get the decisions, but clearly won the fights. But yeah, so the biggest thing I've done is was winning the European title, which is a big thing for any boxer.
Yeah.
Let alone someone with Erbs. But so that was probably what I'd say my crowning achievement sort of thing.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, to have Erbs palsy.
Which I don't think I'd won that when we spoke before, had I?
No,
I don't think.
No.
When we done the original interview, no.
Yeah, so that was 2018. Yeah, I think when we met last, which was like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's an amazing accomplishment, for someone with Erbs palsy. I mean, it just baffles me. I mean, that's like, I mean, I'm just trying to think I've had a punch bag before and just to help me sort of get fit and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know much about boxing, if I'm honest. I sort of don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know from my point of view, like punching with my wrist and the movement and things like that. How have you managed to sort of get over that and sort of find ways of doing it? Obviously, you're doing a really good job of it because you've won so many fights. So like what sort of techniques have you got and how do you sort of get around having Erbs palsy with boxing?
It's pretty difficult, as you can imagine. I mainly just use my non-Erbs arm for most of the punching. I do throw a little bit with my Erbs arm, but I can't, as you can imagine. So with my left arm, I can jab, I can hook, I can cross, I can uppercut, I can throw good shots to the body. I can punch from sort of any angle that I want to punch with because of the coordination of it and everything like that. Whereas my right hand, so my Erbs arm, I can throw what would be classed as a straight right.
Yeah.
Even though it's not very straight, obviously, like my arm's a bit crooked.
Yeah.
But I can't really throw a hook. If I throw a hook with it, it's more like a slap.
Yeah.
I could throw an uppercut if I really concentrate and try to do it, but I couldn't throw it naturally. I can't turn my hand how it's supposed to turn, anything like that. And obviously, it's a lot weaker than my left. The coordination's obviously not there. There's what I was the way I describe it is like it's like there's a mental block as well.
Yeah.
And I guess it must be to do with the damaged nerves and everything like that. So my left arm almost works automatically.
Yeah.
In a fight, I just react with it and I just throw the punches I want to throw with it, and it sort of just comes naturally. Whereas my right arm, I have to sort of really think, right, I can see whenever he does this, he's open to a right hand. So I'll have to like then in my head almost go, right, when he does that, I've got to try and throw the right hand. And normally when they do, it's too late because that's that thought process in the level of boxing I compete at. That thought process is too late by the time you thought it. So it doesn't always work. But you just try your best when you think. So I mean, I use it more for defense, I'd say, than I do attack, because a lot of the defense stuff is obviously just keeping it there to sort of protect his face and sort of blocking punches like this. So it's all like little movements like this, and that's the main thing I really use it for. But that becomes very tiring, muscular wise for my right arm. So I do a lot of training, sort of like weights on my arm and holding weights and everything like that, because my biceps so weak on this arm and everything like that. But the arm hurts less than getting punched in the face. So keep it up.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of working like twice as hard as the person you're fighting, aren't you? Really, because if you think about it, that if you're the process you were saying you were going through in that decision making, and the fact that the arm is weaker, the fact that you've won so many fights and you've done all that is just phenomenal. It's just it's absolutely mind blowing. So amazing.
Thanks,
I know you're going to inspire so many people, with Erbs Palsy with that. So you talk about the arm being weaker. So when you're training for a fight and when you're sort of getting fit and things like that, do you focus more on that side? I mean, have you got a specific sort of workout routine that you do that's tailored to the fact that you've got Erbs Palsy?
I do lots of them, yes. There's lots of extra stuff I do on my right arm, as well as everything else that I have to do as well. So you obviously have to do, with boxing, you have to do the traditional stuff, the running, the pad work, the bag work, the sparring, the strength training, the circuit training, everything like that. So I have to do all of that. Yeah. And then I also have to do extra stuff on my right arm to try and improve it, or I'm probably at the age now where I'm not really improving it, but I'm trying to sort of stop it from deteriorating and trying to keep it as strong as it can be.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to sort of improve the technique, and it gets really tight. The muscles get really tight, so I have to do extra stretching with it and everything like that as well.
Okay.
But at the same time, I feel like because this is weak and I have to do extra work on it because of that, my left arm, I know in the fight I have to do extra work with my left, so I have to throw twice as many punches with my left, or I have to throw as many punches with my left, really, than my opponent will throw with both arms.
Yeah.
So my left arm needs to be twice as fit, twice as strong, have twice as much muscular endurance in it than your average person's arm would, or your average professional boxer's arm would. So I then have to also do, or I say after, I feel like I have to do extra work on that arm as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that to, I'm working all this on the right arm, but in reality, I'm only going to throw it 10 times in the fight. So, it's great that I can keep it and defend myself, but am I really going to win the fight with it? Now, I might stop myself from getting hurt, but the actual winning and landing my own shots is mostly going to be my left. And I know I'm going to throw hundreds and hundreds of punches with my left hand in a fight. So that needs to be as strong as it can possibly be. So I spend hours just throwing a jab on the bag, just repetitively and stuff like that. So I have to do twice as much work basically as everyone else.
But do you ever worry that, because I know something that I'm conscious about, that because I used to play a lot of cricket and things like that, and with bowling with this arm and stuff, and then over time my right shoulder, because I've got Erbs in my left, but my right shoulder was start to feel like I'm using it too much almost, and like that wear and tear on that good arm. I think we've got to. It's one thing I think. I mean, I don't know. Is that something that you're conscious about that you think?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, so like I would always describe my Erbs arm as like, oh, that's my injured arm almost.
Yeah.
Because that's because of the birth injury, and I don't know, just maybe that's the way I've sort of had it in my head. But in reality, with the boxing, my left arm is always sore. So I've always got issues with my shoulder in my left arm, my non-Erbs arm. I've always got issues in my shoulder. They're just like niggly little things where it's always being overworked.
Yeah.
I've got issues in my elbow. I've had to have surgery on my elbow, my left elbow. And that just so happened to be a couple of months before a fight I had to have, so that wasn't very good. But yeah, I had surgery on this arm. I've torn a ligament in my left elbow. I've got torn cartilage in my left wrist because of doing certain things with it. My hands are always sore. So really, like my left side, my so to say healthy, good, strong side is actually the side that's always in pain.
Yeah.
I can't even on my so I can't physically straighten my arm out on my right arm.
Yeah.
But if I straighten my arm out on my left arm, it hurts. My elbow is like constantly sore. So it's like, what can you do?
I mean, do you do anything for pain? I mean, do you get any pain in your Erbs arm at all?
Not particularly bad. It's one of those, I do get shooting pains and things like that, but nothing crazy, and I don't get too much joint pain either.
Okay.
But I find when I stop doing stuff, it gets worse.
Yeah.
So when I stop exercising, when I stop training, when I stop boxing, and as you think almost like the rest would do it good, but it doesn't. As soon as I stop, if I have a week or two of doing nothing, I start crunching all the time and clicking, and I'll get to the stage where I can't, like, it hurts to straighten it out.
Yeah.
And things like that. So I feel like the more I use it and the more active it is, it sort of keeps it healthy almost. It keeps it moving and everything like that. And that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key, isn't it, to keep it moving? I mean, I know the thing is with Erbs, it's so different for everybody, isn't it? So I think each injury is kind of unique because it depends on what nerves have been damaged and so on. But I know there are many people out there that have got basically no movement. And I think we're quite lucky in the range of movement that we do have, but it's still really challenging. And I know from a stretching point of view, I really try and stretch my arm every day. But with kids and jobs, it's difficult to find that time sometimes to do it. But I think if you make it that routine and build it into your sort of daily routine, then it will become habit. And I think that's a really key thing, isn't it, to kind of make it a habit to stretch your arm. And I know that when I eat, I know I can eat two hands just about, but I always end up just eating with my good arm, just with a fork.
Yeah.
Or if I'm showering, I just do it my hair one-handed or something like that. Yeah. Whereas I know that I can do it just about, but it's trying to remind yourself to actually use the arm. I don't know if you ever find that.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% can relate to you there. You end up just doing everything with the other arm, and this arm sort of gets left behind, sort of thing, and you just don't do it. Or I'm trying to think, I like try and consciously do it with my Erbs arm to try and sort of counter that, but then I find like that's really awkward, and then I'll grab with my other arm and like move my arm with it. I think that's just completely defied the point, hasn't it? I suppose. But
do you ever get frustrated with it, Joe?
Do really, isn't it?
Do you ever get frustrated?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there'll probably be times when I'd say to you, no, like, I don't, I'm chuffed to bits that I've got it because of the life it's good. Like, I wouldn't change anything now. But it definitely, frustration is the right word. I just sometimes think, oh God, it'd just be so much easier, wouldn't it? If both my arms worked like my left. Life would be so much easier, I think. And not just like with boxing specifically, obviously. I mean, in my opinion, if my right arm was as good as my left, I'd be world champion. And I don't think that's outlandish to say because of what I've achieved.
Yeah, no, of course.
Only using the one arm. But then I look at it as well and I think, well, it wouldn't have got as good as it has if I had, two arms that work properly. So it probably wouldn't, or I might not have even been a boxer in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the obvious one with boxing, but just in day-to-day life, I find it very frustrating because, I'm sure you understand, but your clothes don't fit properly. Every time I wear a t-shirt, I feel like I have to roll up the sleeve on this side so it looks the same as this one because my humerus bone is particularly one of the biggest parts that's different.
Yeah.
So I'm forever rolling my sleeve up, or if I wear a smart suit, I have to roll I'm forever rolling, and I feel myself doing it. Because I just sort of like, I do it without thinking about it, but then I notice I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I just, just stuff like that. And I look at myself in pictures and I think, oh, I look really obvious today. Or, I walk past the mirror or something. I think, oh, bloody hell, looks really, because when you know, it's like when you're walking around, you don't really look it. I don't really, it's not something that's in my head all the time that I've got it, but I'll almost catch myself and think, oh God, like, do you know what I mean? And sometimes you're not really fussed, it is what it is. And then there's other days in there, just like anything, you feel a bit more self-conscious, or you feel a bit more, conscious, I suppose, of it. And
you know what, Joe, sorry, I know it sounds bad me saying that it's really good me hearing you say this. I know but I can so relate to all of that. You don't, sometimes you don't think about it. And then when you said about the photograph or walking past the mirror or something and you notice it, and it's one of those, how do you feel when people say, oh, I've never noticed you got a problem, never noticed you got a disability or whatever? How does that make you feel? Because I know how it makes me feel. So I just want to sort of, how does that make you feel when people say that to you?
It's funny because I just think either to me personally, I take it different ways, different depending on how you're feeling on that day, I suppose. But sometimes I'll take it almost as if, oh well, you must be lying. Almost like thinking, why are you just, why are you lying about it? It's clearly obvious to me. I just sort of think, like, if you got your eyes shut, if you haven't noticed it. But then other days that, it's people just trying to either think, oh, maybe they're just trying to be nice, then they're trying to make a thing of it, and like, fair enough. And I think sometimes other people have a bigger problem with disabilities, and not just Erbs palsy, but I think people don't know how to talk about it to you sometimes. So they're just trying to be polite, I suppose, and things like that. But I mean, I find it a bit strange that because it's so obvious to me. And when I see other people, I think I notice it on people more. Like, they will see someone, say, just walk around, just day-to-day life. Someone, I say to my wife or something, I say, oh, they look like they might have Erbs palsy.
I'm the same,
Person. She's like, why? And she's like, why would you even notice if someone's arms was that, or the way someone walks? I think, oh, maybe they've got a problem with their leg, or something. I feel like you're much more conscious of it. So maybe it's just the fact that we're conscious of it that makes us think, I don't know, or makes me think that how do you not notice it? But at the same time, some days you might catch me, but oh, that's good then. You haven't noticed it. Maybe I don't look that strange after all. Perhaps walking around.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because not all disabilities are and I try not to call it a disability, even though technically it is. Like, I try not to think of it as a disability. But they're not all sort of visual, are they? So it's like when people say, oh, it looks fine to me. They don't realise the mental battle that sometimes we've got going on in our heads, and the things that we have to overcome, and I think that sometimes it can be shrugged off, Erbs palsy, because I don't feel as though sometimes it's not taken quite as seriously as other things. I don't know.
Definitely sort of like played down as if it's not really a big deal. When, like, in reality, for us, it's like, it's a massive part of our lives in it that we've had to deal with and struggle with, and I know so many people out there that do that have to,
And like, I know you've got kids as well. I know when I've got two, and I know when we were having the doctor and midwife appointments, I was questioning them about Erbs palsy, brachial plexus injury. And they said, oh, no, if that happens, they'll recover. And it's like, well, no, they won't, Don't give me that. Like, and they kind of try to downplay it a little bit. But it's a funny one. And we earlier on, we were talking about day-to-day tasks. And, I've got a 4-month-old now and a 3-year-old. How are you with things like changing nappies and, like, if you were holding the baby and things like that? Was that a struggle? Because sometimes, if I'm holding my son, like, my arm starts to ache, and he likes it in that position. I've got to hold him like this, and if I hold him like this, I feel like he's going to fall out my arm and things. I mean, things like that. How did you sort of cope?
Yeah, I mean, I found it really difficult, especially early on, like with my first child, because I don't know, with my kids now, I'm sort of, I don't know, you sort of like just, I get on with it, they'll be all right. But with the first child, I was so conscious of not dropping him almost, because I knew, like, I can hold him on this side fine, and I still now I can only hold him this side. And one of the things that does really annoy me, I mean, I've got 3 kids, but just when we had 2, was I couldn't pick them both up. And that used to really annoy me, like really frustrate me, that I'd come home and I'd seen them for ages and they'd come over for a hug, and like want me to pick them up, and I'm like, well, okay, well, if you both stand on this side, and I'll sort of scoop you both around in my left arm and I'll pick you up. But yeah, I mean, I did find that very frustrating, and then like trying to feed them, like I can hold them in this side and there, but then if they're wriggling around and want to go this side, it makes it's really awkward. And changing nappies, I've found, I've got a 1-year-old, so I still have to do it now, but I find that so awkward, you know, because trying to obviously like hold their feet, hold their legs to try and clean them, and it's just, it's so awkward to me. But I mean, you just try and, you've got no choice, have you? You've got to do it. And you sort of figure out a way, but I find that very awkward. A lot of the stuff with the kids.
Yeah, and I find things like, you know, actually, once you've cleaned them up, don't change the nappy, like just if you've got poppers, you know, like you know, things like that, just trying to, it's like being dexterous and actually trying to get those things together sometimes can be a bit fiddly.
Yeah, the poppers and buttons and even zips and everything like that, and putting their shoes on. Yeah. Just getting them dressed, just trying to get them dressed. It's like, well, yeah, I can do that, but then it's all like this, isn't it? Like, it is really awkward, isn't it? Yeah. And frustrating. And I do sort of in my head think as well, my eldest is nearly 6, and he is sort of at that age now where he can sort of, I do talk to him now about it being that I've got a different arm to a normal like other people and things like that. And that is something that's always sort of worried me almost. Like what will they think of it? Will they be like ashamed of me almost? Which I know is a silly thing to say, but you can't help it, can you? If you know what I mean? I know. Because I've got a scar from an operation on my shoulder, and like that, my eldest went through a little bit of a stage where he was a bit fascinated with that, but it was more sort of out of interest. And luckily, I've got other scars, obviously, and I've had other operations that aren't to do with Erbs, so it's not the end of the world. But like, it's just like, you know, questions about that, and I sort of find it awkward to think what's the best way to answer them. Yeah. As well.
Just tell them you're a superhero.
yeah.
You know, I think, you know, when they get old enough and they can understand what you've done and what you've accomplished, I think, you know, they won't help but be proud of what you've done, you know, and be a role model for so many other people. So, you know, I think it's amazing, Joe, and you know, I so relate to everything that you're saying with being a father. And one thing that really frustrates me, I can't put my arm up to put my lad on my shoulders. I haven't got the strength and I haven't got the range of move, because he's always like, "Yeah, Daddy, can I go on your shoulders?" We're like, "No, because I can't get you up there." If someone puts him on my shoulders, then it's fine, because I can kind of hold onto his hands and stuff. But I just want to be able to like lift him up and be able to put him on my shoulders, and it's just, I can't, because I just physically can't do it.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's little things like that which you take for granted, you know, which not, you know, I keep saying normal people as if we're not normal people, you know what I mean? People that haven't got Erbs or any disability really. There's so many things, isn't there, that you take for granted. Absolutely. And you don't even think, do you? And I know there's lots of people in much worse positions than we are as well. So I try and got to be grateful as well. Like my mother, she's got MS and she's in a wheelchair, she can't walk, and she finds it very tough not being able to do a lot of stuff with my kids. And just like babysitting them and stuff like that, she finds really difficult. So I try to sort of look at it from that perspective. And you know, when you've got, it's difficult, isn't it? You try and keep a sort of positive mindset as best as you can.
Definitely.
But I try to take those sort of things, like, you know, it could be a lot worse.
Absolutely.
You know, there are people with much worse than we've got, and I try and you know, just try and look at it that way, you know, especially when you're sort of like those frustrating days, or feeling a bit depressed about it for whatever reason, or a bit down and dumps about it. You know, there are people in much worse boat than that.
So you were born with it rather than it happened sort of later in life with a sort of a motorbike accident or something. So this was a birth injury for you.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And how long? So what? There's so many questions about Erbs palsy, about being born with it and so on. So how long did your parents sort of know? Because I mean, sometimes people don't know they've got Erbs palsy till later on in life. Was it something that your sort of mum and dad sort of knew straight away that there was something wrong with your arm, or did that sort of happen later in life?
Yeah, they knew straight away. I mean, obviously I don't remember, but they told me that I didn't really move my arm for about 6 months. Didn't move it at all.
Yeah.
My auntie was a midwife, so she sort of knew a bit more about it.
Yeah.
She a midwife or a nurse, but she knew more about it than my mum and dad did.
Yeah.
They were sort of didn't know too much about it, but the doctors I think they were sort of over the, you sometimes like you hear doctors and they say, oh, I'll be fine, I'll get over it.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were more the other way with my parents, perhaps a particular doctor at work, because I mean, they said to me, said to my parents like that I wouldn't even be able to run in a straight line and stuff like that, which seems to me like knowing people with Erbs palsy, like why would, it seems very extreme, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To say that you wouldn't even be able to do that. But so it was sort of, they knew right from the off there was something wrong, which I think for me personally was a good thing, because it meant that they were sort of on the case all the time. And luckily for me, they were quite hard on me about it. So they were always making sure I did my physio and I wasn't, held back from doing anything. I was sort of treated the same. I've got an older sister. I was treated the same. So it wasn't like, oh no, you can't do this because of your arm, or, I wasn't sort of encouraged not to do things because of it, because you might hurt your arm and stuff like that. So I think I was very lucky in that respect that my parents did have that attitude about it.
Yeah,
so,
and I think that's the key, isn't it? Having supportive parents and being in that supportive environment where you're not treated differently. And yes, we do have to sort of adapt the way we do things, but I think we can do stuff. And we're lucky, like you said, that we've got the range of movement that we do have, and it's just so I was told that I'd never be able to play like a musical instrument or play guitar or anything like that, and so because I can't turn my arm over to play chords or anything like that, I end up playing this way. So I play left-handed, so I can strum, and like playing the drums, I don't have necessarily the movement, so I just change. If I'm doing a drum fill, I'll just change the kind of drum fill that I do to adapt to the way that my arm can move. So I think that's and that's probably the similar sort of thing to what you were saying earlier about you with the way you box and things like that. So it's just sort of adapting the way we do things, and it doesn't mean that we can't be successful. It's just we do things slightly differently.
Yeah, you have to go about it slightly different way than what is the normal way, isn't it? But that's life, isn't it? I suppose you do have to adapt, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So growing up with it, were you sort of did your friends sort of notice it, or was there any sort of any issues that you had at school with growing up? So I'm sort of thinking about asking questions that might be for teenagers that are going through the same sort of thing. I mean, did you struggle at school or anything?
No, not really. I mean, you had the usual sort of like Mickey taking that, people do. I mean, like my mates still take the Mickey out of me now. But like, it's all sort of, lighthearted. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah.
So I was never like bullied about it or anything, but I do think the stuff I did helped because of that, because I mean, I started martial arts when I was 5.
Wow.
I started boxing when I was 8, and I, the sort of, I don't know if, I guess confidence is the right word, confidence that brought me to not be like, I was never felt less than, if you know what I mean. I never felt like, I never felt like I'd let anyone do that to me either, I wouldn't let people bully me about it. I didn't, I was never a victim with it.
That's
I was
good.
sort of, well, I've got that, but so what?
Yeah. But I
think because of those things, it was sort of people, I mean, I grew up in a nice area as well, but like it's, it was never really a thing. Obviously you get name calling and stuff like that, but I mean, so what, it's not a big deal.
And they wouldn't mess with you anyway, doing martial arts and boxing.
It, obviously, but
exactly.
But I think perhaps, I think that was all, like I said, when my parents took me as physio for my arm, but at the same time, I mean, they haven't said this to me, but I would think there's a possibility that they would get bullied about that type of thing. So at least we can teach you something, a way to look after yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. I mean, listen, it was a different sort of subject, but I mean, in my opinion, I think every child should do martial arts or boxing or some sort of something like that. Obviously for the respect and everything like that, that it teaches you, but just to be able to, look after yourself and be confident, stand up, know that you can stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
It just, I think, but then especially for somebody with a reason to be bullied, almost, I would say, in children's eye or whatever. That's probably a bad way of putting it, but then it's even more important to do things to stop it from happening, or at least know you can sort of look after yourself.
Definitely. So you run a boxing centre, don't you? Because I've seen you follow your Instagram and things, and you kind of do training with younger kids as well, don't you?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't run it myself, but my father-in-law runs a boxing gym, so I help out there a lot, and I help with a lot of the coaching with the amateurs. I still do a bit of coaching at my old gym where I grew up in Malmesbury. I sort of train kids. I do personal training. I do boxing classes. I've recently, in the last year or so, started going into schools, teaching boxing in schools, and also like talking to the kids. So I go in there and sort of tell them my life story, sort of thing, and sort of just try and give the kids lessons that they can learn from what I've been through, really.
Perfect.
And I think it's been pretty good, and I've had a good response from the majority of the kids, and that they seem to have enjoyed a lot of it and taken good things away from it. And I've had messages from certain teachers and different things since about that it has helped, or
that's brilliant.
And you don't know, do you? So I mean, maybe you can only do what you can. You try. It feels like the right thing to do to me. It feels like it's the right thing to do to share what I've been through.
Absolutely.
Especially because there will be kids in the schools. There might only be one child in the whole. I've been doing it mostly in primary schools, but there might be one child in the whole school that perhaps gets bullied.
Yeah.
Or even if it's only minor or whatever it is, or if I can sort of get through to them, to stick up, not stick up for themselves, but just feel better about themselves, feel like they can achieve what they want to achieve. And it's not necessarily going to be boxing, is it? That's what I try and convey to them. They're like, you're not, I'm not telling you all to go and be a boxer.
Yeah.
But if you've got something wrong, something wrong with you that stops you from doing something, like you were told you'll never be able to play a musical instrument, and you went and you play the guitar, you play the drums, so which you shouldn't be able to do. And I like to say to kids, you could have whatever it may be. It might be dyslexia, anything like that. That's not to say you couldn't be an author.
Absolutely.
You couldn't be a writer. Why can't you? Just because it's a bit harder for you,
exactly,
doesn't mean that it's impossible. You can still do it. Yeah.
If you've got the ideas.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's no reason to hold you back. There's literally no reason from to hold back. I'd like to say to them, like, if I've achieved what I've achieved in boxing with what I've got, there's almost no excuse that anyone they could say to me, and it be valid. Is the way I sort of try and explain it to some of them.
Amazing. Like that's so powerful, and I think that's amazing that you're doing that, and the impact that you're having with the kids in school. So look, we are running out of time a little bit here, Joe, but I just want to say thank you so much for taking your time to have another interview with me. And this we'll put this out there, and I'm really hoping that it's going to inspire some people. I know it will inspire loads of people. Is there anything else you wanted to say, words of wisdom before we sort of sign off?
I don't know. I don't know if I've got too much wisdom in me, to be honest. I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Trying to think of, I don't have any catchy slogans or anything like that. I think I feel like the message I try and convey, like I said, is just, a lot of it's just about not giving up when you think, well, not even necessarily when you think, but when people tell you that you can't do something, it doesn't mean anything at all. Someone's opinion about what you can do, whether they're an expert, whether they're professional. Like I was told by doctors all my life that I'd never be able to do what I've done, and I've done it. So I mean, obviously you can't go out and fly, you can't just go and hop, but within reason, there's no reason that you can't do whatever you want to do just because other people think you can, or even if you may question yourself. Like there's been hundreds of times, in my boxing career where I think, oh, am I going to be able to do this? How can I achieve it? Can I win this? But I feel like by not giving up and just keep persevering and, being resilient, you can even if you necessarily don't reach, the final goal you wanted to, the journey you would have been on in your life, could take you, somewhere amazing, really. So absolutely. I think it's just one of those, and it never really given up is one of the, the thing to me, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thank you. That's perfect. So yeah, thanks again, Joe. You're an absolute legend. And so what's next for you, really quickly? What's next for you then? Have you got any more fights on the way, or?
Nothing on the horizon at the moment, unfortunately. I've been trying to reach out and trying to get a few things sorted out, but nothing's really come to fruition at the moment. The way it's looking, I've been out the ring now for sort of nearly 2 years, and it's getting to the stage where I'm like, well, I'm not going to be as good as I should be, because I've been out the ring so long, talk about the loop. So I don't know. So I might never box again. Hopefully I will. I'm planning, I'm still training. I'm still, working and everything like that. So fingers crossed that I will. But if not, I'm doing all this stuff now. I'm doing all this coaching. Brilliant. I've got 3 kids on my plate, so it's not like I've got spare time on my hands, to be honest. And I do, like I say, I do lots of personal training. If you're ever in Bristol, anybody wants to do some training, get in touch. And doing the stuff in the schools, I really enjoy that as well. It's like, I am getting paid for most of it, but I enjoy it, so it's like, it's, I love doing it. So fingers crossed, just doing more of that.
Good stuff. Well, thanks again, Joe. And we'll stay in contact, and hopefully we can have another chat another time.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it. Always good to talk.
Mate. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.
Next time on Exploring Erbs Palsy, I speak with Adrian Claiborne, a professional NFL player.
My mama need a brand new crib, and my sisters need shoes for the kids, and my brothers need bread for the bills, and my pops need food for the meal.